Convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius will be a free man today. The Department of Correctional Services has confirmed a decision by the Correctional Supervision and Parole Board last month to release Pistorius on parole. The 37-year-old was convicted of murdering his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, on Valentine's Day almost 11 years ago. He's been behind bars for more than 8 years now. The Correctional Services Department says general parole conditions will also apply to Pistorius. Part of his parole conditions include that he will be assigned a monitoring official who will have to be kept informed when he's seeking job opportunities or moving homes. He will also have to attend programs on gender-based violence and continue therapy sessions on anger management. Pistorius may not consume alcohol and any other prohibited substances. He will also not be allowed to conduct media interviews. For more on today's expected release, we cross back to SABC News Reporter Hasina Gori, who is outside the Kgosi-Mampuru prison. A very good morning to you, Hasina. Thank you so much for joining us. I see a huge media contingent assembling behind you. Take us through what's happening.
Anyone of interest? Good morning, Simpiwe. We're here at the Kgosi-Mampuru prison here in Atteridgeville in the north of Pretoria, where this morning convicted murderer and Paralympian and Olympian
yeah. Were you not talking to me? Were you not talking to me?
Okay guys, can we not fight?
Start talking now.
Good morning, Simpiwe. We're here outside the Kgosi-Mampuru prison in Atteridgeville in the north of Pretoria, where this morning convicted murderer and Paralympian and Olympian Oscar Pistorius is expected to be released on parole. That is 11 years after that fateful shooting in February 2013, which saw his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp being shot dead multiple times in the early hours of Valentine's Day morning behind a closed bathroom door in his home. Throughout his 11 years, he has been adamant that he had not intended or premeditated to actually, kill Riva Steenkamp, that he had believed there was intruders in the home and that were in the bathroom, and that he had been trying to ensure that they did not come through into his room. That had been his defense and his version of events throughout the case, and he had stood quite firmly on that. He was convicted of premeditated murder in 2014 and sentenced to 5 years. That sentencing as well as a conviction was constantly appealed throughout that, being changed to then be murder, and then he was convicted from 5 years to a sentencing of 6 years. That was then moved to the minimum sentencing of 15 years. He was finally then adjusted to the 13 years, 5 months, which he's currently serving at the moment. There was also an appeal process that happened. This is the second time that the appeal process went through, and that it was finally granted. When he first brought an appeal, it was denied, saying that he did not meet the minimum requirements to be granted parole. At that time, that decision was then brought to the Constitutional Court, where it was then revoked and found that he was actually eligible. He was then granted parole last year in November, and that is today where we are right now. It's uncertain what time he would be released and what is the actual process, as the Department of Correctional Services has been adamant with saying that he will be treated as a normal inmate, and that process will continue as a normal inmate or parolee will go through the process. This case, brought and garnered much, interest from across the globe, international media, locally. It was a story that really caught the headlines throughout that process. And I want to bring in someone who has been following the case from the time they were quite a young child. Shannon, you were quite, grade 4 at that time when the case started. You're here today. What brought you? Let's start with what brought you to come through today to the parole and be outside the court.
Well, my dad is a journo, and he followed the case throughout. He was there for 30 days, every day in court. And, I didn't know where he was going. He just said, I'm going to see Oscar. So for Oscar to be released now, I think it's a full circle moment in my life, to see him get released, and here with my dad. That's why I'm here today. And it's just, I'm just interested in the way our justice system works and how the system of being in prison and then getting out of prison works, because no one really sees that in the movies and stuff. You only see American stuff. So it's just interesting to me. And also like the psychology behind a killer and what would lead someone to take that step in taking someone's life, whether it was a mistake or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a young child, watching that, as you mentioned, the psychology of it, the story behind it, what caught you and what gripped you? You said your dad was a journalist, so you also heard a lot of it, at home, being talked about. How was that, growing up?
It was quite scary because, you're quite young in a country where you don't really know what's going on yet because, you're 11 years old. It is quite scary to hear that, like, someone that everyone knew and, he was an idol to some, would end up in prison and kill someone. So, it was quite troubling to see. But at the end of the day, it could be anyone, it could be someone
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a young South African growing up and, we hear these cases and gender-based violence, quite an issue. Do you feel that, seeing that Oscar Pistorius specific case and the justice system working in that case, did it give you hope that those that do these kind of crimes do face time and do pay their price?
Yes, I do think in a lot of cases, gender-based violence cases, no one really gets prosecuted for the crimes that they commit. But it did give me a little bit of hope to see, okay, like he actually did go to prison, which, could be helpful in my life if something happens to me. I have that hope that maybe the person who would do that to me would actually face consequences of their actions and not just, walk along the road like nothing happened.
Thank you so much. Just one of those that we are speaking to outside the court, Shannon, speaking to us here, someone who, as an 11-year-old, followed this case, and many, many others. I'm going to ask Masabata, the camera operator, to just give us a sense of what we're seeing outside court. Quite a large media contingent, a lot of media interest in this case. It's been the case since the beginning of this matter, throughout that case, from the moment that Oscar Pistorius, the news broke and the headlines, caught on to the story of Oscar Pistorius, as you heard, an idol, someone who was quite well known, someone who was known within the community, an inspiration to many. When he was found, that he had shot Riva Steenkamp, his model girlfriend, someone who was also rising in their career, that story gripped the headlines. We saw it throughout the bail application. We saw it through the trials, through the many appeals. And today here, as we wait for him outside the parole, that same scene's playing out once again. And I want to just talk you through what the process may be like. We're not certain what time he would be released, but as the Department of Correctional Services mentioned, he will be processed as a normal parolee. And in a normal circumstance, he would wake up at 7 o'clock or go for breakfast at 7 o'clock, dress up in civilian clothes, and then go through the process of having his fingerprints going to be gathered, and then he will then be transported from this facility to the Community Correctional Center or offices, which are in the Pretoria CBD, and then he would meet with his parole officer or monitoring officer, who will then read through the requirements and his criteria for parole. Some of the rules that he would take in place will be, some of the rules that will be in place for him, well, that he will be not allowed to take alcohol. He would not be able to take substances. He would have to alert his monitoring officer or parole officer on any change of job opportunities that he might want to take, any movement of homes. Right now, he would be, given an address, which is his uncle's, from what we understand, where he would be staying for the duration of his parole, which would end in December 2029. That is in 5 years. That's the length of the remainder of his current sentence as well. So these are just some of the criteria that he would then be informed about. He will then also be given a card which would have his name, his surname, his identification number on it, as well as a picture, as well as his parole number on it. And that will be the card that he would be using when he does check in with his parole officer. So this is the process that we can expect to take place today. We're told that there will be no press release or press conference from the Department of Correctional Services to alert us on when Oscar is processed at this point. So it's a wait and see game, and we're just trying to piece together when he would leave from here. We're told this through one of the prison transport vehicles. So we're waiting for that to take place. So far, there hasn't been any prison vehicles that have been taken. But we're here at this one, at the main gate. We're told there are two other gates that are here as well. So it's uncertain which gate he will leave from. He will then move from here to the CBD, which is the Community Correctional Center, and that process will begin from there, and only then will he then move to his uncle home, where he will begin his parole sentence, which is for another 5 years. This is an ongoing story. We'll try and keep you updated throughout the day, bringing you information as we get it. But for now, back to you in studio, Simpiwe.
All right, Hasina, thank you so much for your update. Hasina Gori there outside the Kgosi Mampuru prison and just waiting for the release of Oscar Pistorius.